Welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. Today we are going to make a daisy-centered granny square. This is a 6.5-inch square or 16.5 centimeters, and if you're using a DK weight yarn, it'll be a little bit smaller, about 6 inches. This is a highly requested granny square tutorial, so we were super excited to bring it to you today, and it's sort of fitting too, because we're in the spring, and hopefully soon the wild daisy will be popping up all over the place. And I love daisies. They make me smile. They're such a happy, sunny flower. This is a great little motif for making baby blankets or ponchos or purses or sweaters or pillows or pretty much anything that you want to slap a bunch of daisies on. And one of my favorite things about 6.5-inch squares is that they are relatively quick to make. They don't take up much yarn, and before you know it, you've got a whole stack of them. So let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up a daisy square together. In order to make our daisy squares, I'm using a 100% acrylic size 4 medium yarn today. You want around 2 yards of yellow and 20 yards each of your background color and the white color, and that's per square. You want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and the hook we're using is a 5.5 millimeter, also known as an I or a 9 in the US, a size 5 in the UK. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. Just a quick note before we get started. For those of you who have also been enjoying our fancy 12-inch granny square collection, we have a new highly requested design to add to our pattern collection over in our Etsy shop. It's a unicorn. We have a link to our shop in the description box down below, so if you want to check it out, you can click that link and take a visit. We're going to begin with a cinch circle. Now, if cinch circles give you trouble, you can just chain a length of 5 and join with a slip stitch to make a chained ring. But I like the centers of my grannies to be kind of small, so I'm going to create a cinch circle, and once you have your circle or your chained ring, you're going to single crochet 12 stitches into it. So 12 stitches into your circle, and if you're using the cinch circle technique like me, make sure you work all of those stitches over top of the short tail, because that's what we're going to use to cinch the circle shut. Once you have 12 single crochet worked into your circle, you can cinch it up. It doesn't have to be too tight. A little space in the middle is perfectly all right. We're going to join with a slip stitch to that first single crochet just to finish off our circle. And now you can snip your yarn. Fasten off. Pull that nice and tight. And take a moment to weave those tails in around the back of your circle. It does help to weave your tails in as you go throughout this pattern. For row 2, we're going to begin with a slip knot with our white yarn. Pick up your center. You should have 12 stitches all the way around. I like to join my yarn with a slip stitch in the last stitch I made before I fastened off. So there's the little tiny fastened off knot right there. And I'm going to join my white yarn with a slip stitch. There we go. Let's start a petal. We're going to chain 3 to begin. And into the same stitch that we joined in, so if you pull up on it, you can see it right there, we're going to treble crochet. So a treble is wrap your yarn around your hook twice, put your hook through that stitch, pick up a loop. You'll have 4 loops on your hook, and now you're going to wrap, pull back through 2 loops, wrap, pull back through 2 loops, wrap, pull back through 2 loops. So it's like a double crochet, only with 1 extra step. We're going to chain 3, and into that same stitch we're going to slip stitch. So hook goes back in there and just slip stitch. Pull up on that. And that is our first petal. So each petal consists of chain 3, treble crochet, chain 3, slip stitch, all worked into the same stitch. As you go around, it's going to get kind of busy. There's going to be a lot more yarn sort of as you add petals, so always be sure to pull back on the last petal you made before you work your next one, because you don't want to miss any stitches as you go. We're going to skip over our little fasten off knot. We're going to find the next stitch. We're going to slip stitch into that stitch to begin. And here we go for our second petal. Chain 3, treble crochet into the same stitch, so right into the same place. Chain 3, and slip stitch back into the same place. So chain 3, treble crochet, chain 3, slip stitch. Move it back out of the way so you can see your next stitch. Slip stitch to begin your next petal. Chain 3, treble crochet, chain 3, and slip stitch all back into the same place. You're going to repeat that all the way around. You'll have 12 petals once you're finished. You have 12 stitches on your center. You're going to work a petal in each of those stitches, and remember, the stitch begins, or the petal begins, with a slip stitch, and then you chain 3, treble crochet, chain 3, and slip stitch all into the same stitch. So go ahead, work on that. You should have 12 petals at the end of row 2. At the end of row 2, you should have 12 petals. You can sort of find the treble crochets in each of those petals and sort of pull them out a little bit. That'll help define those petals. They are going to curl a little as you work them, but that's okay. You should have 12. And to finish row 2, you're just going to slip stitch into the same stitch that you originally joined your white yarn in. So just slip stitch, and then you can snip your yarn, fasten off, pull that nice and tight, and take a moment to weave that tail in back and forth underneath some of those stitches for row 2. We're going to move on to our background color now. So you're going to take the color you're using as your background today. I'm going to make a nice pink square. We're going to begin with a slip knot. Pick up your flower, pick any one of those 12 petals, find the top of the treble crochet, so that'll be really the only actual stitch that's easy to see in the middle of a petal. Just slip your hook underneath it, or into it I should say, and we're going to join our yarn with a slip stitch. We're going to chain 3, and right now we're just establishing sort of the beginning of a background. We're going to jump to the next petal, find the treble crochet, and slip stitch into the top of that petal. Chain 3 more, jump to the next petal, find the treble crochet, and slip stitch right into the top of that stitch. Chain 3, jump to the next petal, and slip stitch into the top of the treble crochet. And you're going to do that all the way around. At the end of row 3, you'll have 12 chain 3 spaces. At the end of row 3, once you chain your last 3, you're just going to join with a slip stitch in the top of the first treble crochet where you first joined your background color. And you should have 12 chain 3 spaces all the way around, all of them anchored in the top of one of those pretty little white petals. We're going to slip stitch now into the chain 3 space that is immediately next to it. I'm going to work over this little short tail. So chain 3 into the chain 3 space, or I should say slip stitch into the chain 3 space. We're going to begin row 4 in a chain 3 space. And this is where we square up our little circle. So to begin row 4, we're going to chain 3. The chain 3 at the beginning of each of the next 3 rows will count as a double crochet stitch. So chain 3 to begin. We're going to work 2 double crochet into the same space. And we're beginning with a corner, one of the corners of our little square. So we're going to chain 2, and before we leave this space, we're going to work 3 more double crochet into it. So that's a chain 3, 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 3 double crochet, or shell, chain 2, shell. That is a corner. Before we leave, we're going to chain 1. We're going to jump now to the next chain 3 space. I'm still working over that little short tail. And into this chain 3 space, we're going to work 3 half double crochets. So not doubles, half double crochet. So 3 half double crochet stitches. Just ignore that little tail sticking up there. Into that chain 3 space. There we go. Chain 1 before you leave. You want those little spacers. Find the next chain 3 space next door and work 3 half double crochet into it. Chain 1 for a spacer. So we've got shell, chain 2 shell, the usual double crochet shells, chain 1, a little half double crochet shell, so 3 half doubles, chain 1, 3 more half double crochets, a chain 1, and now we start all over again. So into this next chain 3 space, we're going to create a corner. We're back to double crochet. We're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 2 for a corner space, and before you leave, work 3 more double crochet into that same space, and that gives us shell, chain 2 shell, which creates the corner for a granny square. Before you leave, chain 1 for a spacer, and we repeat 3 half double crochets into the next space, chain 1, 3 half double crochets into the next space, chain 1, and you're back to the beginning. You're going to make another corner. So shell, chain 2 shell, those are double crochets, chain 1 before you leave, and repeat. You're going to repeat this little pattern of double crochet shells, so 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet in a corner space, 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, chain 1 before you leave. You're going to work 3 half double crochets and a chain 1 in the next 2 chain 3 spaces. So into the next 3 spaces, or next 2 spaces I should say, you work 3 half double crochets and a chain 1. And then into the next space, you're back to making a corner. Double crochet shell, chain 2, double crochet shell, chain 1, and then 3 more half double crochets, chain 1, 3 more half double crochets, chain 1, and that brings us right back to the beginning. And I'll catch up with you at the end of row 4. At the end of row 4, you've worked your last 3 half double crochets and a chain 1 into that last space. That brings you up to the beginning. We're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3, and that closes off row 4. At this point, you might want to lie it down on your work surface, find those 4 chain 2 corners and pull out the corners so that you can see the little square that we've created. So that squares up our little circular daisy. And now we're going to work another regular row of granny shells. So double crochet shells, we're just using the double crochet stitch now. In order to start row 5, I like to begin in a corner. So we're going to slip stitch through the tops of the next 2 stitches, nice and easy, don't make them tight, and then slip stitch right into that corner. And that sets us up nice and neat and tidy for row 5 to begin. And here we go, chain 3 counts as a double crochet. Into the same space, we're going to work 2 double crochet. So that chain 3 counts as a double crochet, that means we've got our first shell. Chain 2, because we're in a corner space, and work 1 more shell or 3 double crochets into that space to finish the corner. Shell, chain 2 shell, chain 1 before you go for a spacer, hop over to the next space, and we're just using the double crochet stitch now, so we're going to make a regular shell, 3 double crochet into that same space, there's a shell, chain 1 for spacer, jump to the next space, there it is there. You're going to work 3 double crochets or a regular shell into it. Chain 1 for a spacer before you leave. Jump to the next space. We're still working along a side here, so it's another regular old shell, 3 double crochets. Chain 1 before you leave and jump to the next space, and that happens to be a chain 2 corner, so we're going to work 3 double crochet or a shell. Chain 2 for the next corner space, and before you leave, 3 more double crochets. Shell, chain 2, shell in the corner space. So every corner space gets shell, chain 2, shell, and then of course chain 1 before you leave. Each of those little chain 1 spaces along each side just gets a regular shell, so 3 double crochet and a chain 1 before you leave. You're just going to continue that simple little shell pattern all the way around, and I'll catch up with you at the end of the row. At the end of row 5, you'll work your last regular double crochet shell, chain 1, don't forget that last chain 1, that brings you up to the beginning. We're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. And again, it's nice to lie it down, pull out those 4 corners, maybe use the heat of your hand to sort of flatten things down. And that second row of actual granny shells, so the double crochet shell stitch all the way around, really helps to even things up and square up our little daisy pattern. You can snip your yarn, fasten off, weave in that tail, and then grab the white again. We're going to just put on 1 more row of shells, and that will be our little square. We're working the 6th and final row now, so you're back to using your white yarn. We're all going to begin with a slip stitch, or I should say a slip knot, pardon me, on your hook. Grab your square, pick any chain 2 corner you like. You're going to join your yarn with a slip stitch now in that corner space. And because we are beginning in a corner space, we're going to begin with the shell, chain 2 shell. So we're going to chain 3 to begin. Chain 3 counts as a double crochet. Work 2 more double crochet into the same space. That will complete your first shell. Chain 2 for the corner. And before you leave, work 3 more double crochet into that space. Shell, chain 2 shell. That is a corner. And I'm just going to weave in the rest of that little short tail at the end when I'm done. So I'm just going to tuck it to the back for now. Chain 1 before you leave. And into each of those chain 1 spaces all the way across, you're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1, or shell, chain 1 in each of those chain 1 spaces. When you get all the way across, don't forget that last chain 1. You arrive in a corner space and you do the same thing in every corner. 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, chain 1, or shell, chain 2 shell. Don't forget that little chain 1 spacer before you leave. And then you continue. A shell or 3 double crochet in each of those chain 1 spaces across. Don't forget to put a little chain 1 in between each of those shells. I'm finishing my corner. There's my last shell. I'm going to chain 1 for a spacer. These are all chain 1 spaces. They each get 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1, etc. All the way across to the next corner. Every corner is the same. Shell, chain 2, shell, chain 1 before you leave. You're going to repeat that all the way around, and I'll catch up with you at the end of the last row. When you've completed the last shell in the row, don't forget that chain 1 for a little space. You can join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that began the whole row. You can lay it flat, pull out those corners, and there we go. You can snip your yarn, fasten off, weave in that tail. You can sort of flip it over, weave it down through the back of your double crochet, a couple of back and forth through those, or back down and back and forth underneath the corner shell stitches there. Either way, you are done. 6 rows equals 1 6.5-inch daisy-centered granny square. So that's the little daisy granny square. It looks cute with a variety of background colors. You can use up the stash that you've got at home or pick one solid color. It's entirely up to you. We hope you enjoyed making this cute little daisy granny square along with us today, and we will see you soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye, everybody.
Hi, everyone. This is Mama InStitches. Thank you for watching. Here are a few other videos you might enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also click the like button and the bell. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.